Greetings, everyone. First of all, welcome. It's a week or so since New Year's, so we'd still like to say Happy New Year to everyone. On behalf of the Captiva Island Historical Society, I'm Tom Labinati, and I would like to welcome you to our first event of the 2018 season. And though the CIHS celebrates centuries of Captiva history, we are a relatively young organization by standard. This will be our 7th year, and in each one of those years, we have tried to improve on our programming. And I certainly hope, and we have strived to make that a reality again this year. You know, when you think about Captiva history, the 20th century is our sweet spot. And as you'll see with our event tonight, we feel it's as important to chronicle the second half of the 20th century as it is the first half. So that's what we're here tonight for. This is sharing the history and memories of Captiva's colorful restaurants from 1960 to about 1990. And I know we don't want to wait any longer, so I'm going to get things started because you've waited long enough. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our hostess for this evening, the maitre d' extraordinaire, Luann Martin. Now, by way of background, Luann moved here in 1979 with the boy next door. And thankfully, she stayed and he went home. Luann worked at Captain Al's. While working there, she also started at the Bubble Room. Then she worked as a property manager at the Sundial. While working there, she started at the Mucky Duck in 1983 and remains one of the friendly faces still there today. So now to get things started, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panel of Captiva restaurant rock stars. Andreas Berry, Freddie D'Amelia, Victor Mayron, Jeff Schuff, and Cheryl Sims. Hello. Luann, take us to our table.
Okay. All right. I'm going to start with you, Andreas. What was the year and the circumstances that brought you to Captiva?
Well, the year was 1974. And I started working at South Seas, and I should say how that came about. It was South Seas Plantation was just recently purchased by the Mariner Group, and I was working at Sea Pines in Hilton Head, and one of our guests tonight, Al Timbrook, is here. Him and Brian Webb, his general manager, came up to Sea Pines, Hilton Head, and invited us to come down to South Seas, told us they just bought a beautiful resort down here, and they would like to do something similar to what we have up in South Carolina. And so, a long story short, they made us an offer, we came down, made us an offer we couldn't refuse, and here we are. Stayed for 7 years.
Who's we?
It was me, and my chef at that time was Alex Stamm, and my brother. We came all together. Actually, I didn't come together. We didn't come together. We came together for the interview. But when we came back to Sea Pines, and we went to the management and said we want to, we want to quit. They were in uproar and said, you just can't do this. It just absolutely, you can't, And I realized that was tough what we did, no matter about the circumstances. So I decided to stay for another 4 months with Sea Pines just to train a new crew. And so then in November of '94, I finally left and came down here and joined the rest of the gang.
Nice.
Yes.
All right.
74, what did I say?
94.
Oh my gosh. Too many beers already.
Needs a drink.
And the same question for you, Freddie.
Well, I came from New York in '93. When I moved to Florida with all my family, 4 kids, and go from the winds from New York, a big city, and I work in Manhattan for 25 years, and come to Captiva, the casual restaurant all around the island. It was a little big change for me, so
A little bit. Slow down.
So this is, when I came here, my first job was over Bellini's, so back in the '90s, so, and that was it.
How about you, Victor?
That's a long time ago. I don't remember. Well, I'm from the Northeast also, Jacksonville, Florida. And I came over here, our folks, my mom and dad, had moved to, bought a house on Captiva at South Seas. And they found this 3-bedroom house. Well, I started coming here in '74. I think it's the first time I came down was '74 to see South Seas and stuff. But I moved here in February of 1976. The Mucky Duck opened in January of '76. And that's why I came down here.
Jeff?
Yes. I had moved from Minnesota to Central Florida in 1972. And I was working up there, and I knew some people, and a couple of them moved down here to Sanibel. So I'd come down and visit and see what it was like. And I enjoyed it, of course. We always hung out at the Nook. It was the only place to go on Captiva, especially. Yeah. So I decided to move down here, and we were at the Nook one day, and I was talking to Charlie, who ran it. And I said, I'm thinking about moving down here. I need a job. He says, can you cook? I need a cook. And I said, well, I didn't say anything. I thought to myself, I've been working in restaurants, but I'm mainly bartender, waiter, that type. So I said, of course I can cook. When do I start? But back then it was a beer joint with sandwiches. It was pretty simple.
And you, Cheryl?
Well, I first moved here in 1983, but I would say more important than that, I visited here in '75 and totally fell in love. It's just the most wonderful place then and now. And, but we got a restaurant open in 83, excuse me.
Okay.
Oh, don't you never come.
Perfect.
Do you
Excuse me, ma'am, but you had your hands on the top of the glass.
I was trained at the Duck. Did you say man?
You? Oh, sir. Oh, well, yeah, yes.
All right. Andreas, what was the names of the restaurants you worked and where were they located?
You mean since I'm down here?
Since you came here,
Since I came here, as I said before, I was at Southeast for the first 7 years. And then
what was the name of that restaurant?
I was the King's Crown. Wonderful restaurant.
Yes.
And then later Chadwick's. And then in 1980, when I had a job offer in Chicago for the West Inn, and went up there. And it was in January, and it was like 30 degrees below. And came back. I wanted to go because it was a great advancement. It was a good chance for me to, to get up in the world, as they say. And came back and said goodbye to everybody. Went by to Victor and his father, and then his father told me, Andres, are you really sure you want to go to Chicago? I mean, and I really was. I mean, I wasn't that so sure anymore, but it was a good situation because one of the partners at the Mucky Duck at that time went through a divorce, and he needed.
Wasn't
he
my
wanted
father.
to get out, and it was not your father.
It wasn't my father.
Right, it was actually Brian Webb, and I ended up buying his share, and that's how I ended up at the Mucky Duck. And yeah,
You remember, you mentioned South Seas or King's Crown. I don't know how many of you watch TV and the local commercials on television, but remember the bartender?
you have
Jeff
to tell
Rice.
the-
Jeff Rice
Tell
of,
the story.
yeah, he's the attorney in Fort Myers. He always wanted to be an attorney. And somebody helped sponsor him and send him to law school when he was.
Well, yeah, he was a
bar.
bartender at the King's
He was the
Crown.
bartender at the King's Crown,
And
yes.
the guests came up. He was sitting there. It was late at night, and they were talking about going to law school. And he took a check out. I wrote him a check of $5,000 or $7,000. I know, it was amazing.
Now he's a lawyer in Fort Myers, and he's
Right.
also he's an
Rice.
official on. He's a referee on for the NFL too.
Number 44.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, and the same question for you. What were the names of the restaurants you worked and where were they located?
It was Bellini restaurant. It was located right in Andy Rossi Lane, past the Key Lime Bistro. Where you see all the townhouse right now and villas. Anyway, there was we used to get most of the business from the Mucky Duck. They used to go there, all family, especially when the South Sea was 100% capacity. So they wanted to go to the Mucky Duck, but like at 5:30 was already packed. So they come back up the street, and we get all the business.
Listen, Freddie, Paul Walken would tell me every night how busy every restaurant was on Captiva. Let me tell you.
All right,
Yes.
Victor.
Me? Well, after I worked at Church's Fried Chicken in Jacksonville, I moved to Captiva and went to work at the Mucky Duck. Yes.
For how many years, Victor?
How many years?
How many years, Victor?
35.
35 years.
35, yes.
And Jeff?
Timmy's Nook for 5 years, 73 to 78. 5 years.
Seems like 20.
I know. I aged 20. But, no comment. 1979, I opened the Bubble Room with 42 seats. I was there for a year. And then 25 years at Tween Waters. 26 years at Tween Waters.
Wow, very nice.
Oh,
And Cheryl?
Opened the greenhouse in 1983 with two wonderful partners from Virginia Beach, Carl and Barbara Summerell, and a wonderful chef, my husband at the time, Michael Peel. And then a few years later, we opened the Sunshine Cafe, which two different ends of the, like bookends of Captiva Square, Village Square. And just great years.
Order up, we have an order up. Thank you, thank you.
Oh, my God.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Andreas, can you describe the physical space of the restaurant, indoors and out, seating and for how many? Did it have to pay parking? What, all the restaurants you've
This
been
is
at?
getting complicated.
Well, obviously, the first one was Southeast, the King's Crown.
Weren't you also at Chadwick's?
Well, that came later.
Okay.
I think it came in 78 or something like. Yeah, I think it was
Oh, I know
78.
it was, beginning of 78.
And, but South Seas, the King's Crown at that time was open for the public. So, but the parking was, of course, back then never an issue. So, and I'm sure a lot of people in here probably remember the King's Crown restaurant. And of course, we think very fondly back to this time. And so it was had 150 seat capacity, I think, something like that. Right.
And Freddie, same question for you.
Okay. As soon as you got the Bellini inside, they had a big patio. Then they had a private room which you sit 25 people. It was all enclosed like a room. Then you go a little more up, there's another outside seating which would fit another 30 people. In the inside, they had a big bar They had a big lunch with music. They had a few nights a week. And then through the restaurant, you sit about 150 people. So the whole thing would sit about, I would say, 2.25.
It's big.
And we used to do like I say, it was not open for lunch. It was the only place that opened until midnight, so you could get bite to eat at 11 o'clock, midnight. So, but all the South Sea clientele used to come in, all the Europeans, they like to eat late at night. When everybody at Sanibel midnight, they got to sleep. The European come out. And, I tell you the truth, they used to spend good money.
Physical description of the
know.
restaurant.
Oh, okay.
So that was it. Thanks.
Well, when the Duck first opened, we sat 77 people. I remember the sign, 77 people. And then over the years, we took the outside patio and we had picnic tables up there and we roofed it and then we put vinyl siding on. And next thing you know, we put a waitress out there and then we added more tables and we put in a $250,000 septic system so we could accommodate a little bit more people. And by the time it was all said and done, we sat 90 people and averaged 700 meals a day or something like that. What are you looking at me like that for? You were there. Well, yes.
Timmy's Nook, the original bar was about half the size of this room, probably 16 bar stools, a few tables, I think 3 tables, I believe. And then they added on what they called the porch out on the other side. And that had 6 or 7 big tables. But there was no air conditioning, no telephone,
No Wi-Fi.
no Wi-Fi. There was a jukebox that did a lot of business.
Oh, yeah.
And that was it. It was pretty basic. It was a beer bar.
You kind of competed with Key Lime, I'm sorry, what was it called? It was the bar at South Seas that they
That
opened.
wasn't open.
I thought that had opened.
The only other restaurant,
Shirley's.
Shirley,
I guess
Shirley's.
it was Shirley's.
Whirlies.
she didn't open until the 80s.
Yeah.
The first restaurant to open on Captiva after Timmy's Nook was Victor.
Yeah. No, and it wasn't me. It was Don and Brian.
It was Don.
Jeff, you can't sell yourself
We-
short. Come,
when Don they bought that restaurant, we said they won't last a year.
A burger's a burger. I said a burger's a burger. The crow sandwich
you
is
had
what
the best
people
burgers
mean.
in town.
Yeah. Yep.
And Cheryl, can you describe the physical?
I've almost forgotten what the question was. I'm just kidding.
Where's her wine?
You told me.
Get some more wine.
No, I'm fine.
Physical space of the restaurant, indoors and outdoors.
We actually didn't have a space. It was a real estate office, so we moved the real estate office in, thank you, Helen Thomas, and rebuilt her real estate office because we needed a corner. At that time, we had a code enforcement that was pretty good out here in Lee County.
There wasn't any.
And we could only be open for dinner because of the parking spaces. They required that you have so many. We opened and we built the restaurant, got everything done with the help of Comer and Moore Construction, and we opened, but we didn't have a liquor license at that time, and we did a very nice 5-course gourmet dinner.
Had a liquor license.
It was $12, full, and we decided you had to pair some nice wines with it. So we gave the wines away at $12, and we were an instant hit, I think.
On Captiva, yeah.
But, and then the Sunshine was Linda and Jack Mall. Do you remember them? I think it was something special, a sandwich.
Something special, yeah.
Remember that on the other end? Captiva Cafe. And when we bought that, that's right. You're right. Yes, I had forgotten that. But when we opened that, they could only be open for breakfast and lunch. And then we could only be open at dinner. So therefore, the parking worked between the two. And I was lucky enough that 3 of my 4 children were crazy enough to be in the restaurant business, and Karen Bell helped. Didn't you, Karen? That's right, and a great one too, and we're still together.
Karen worked at the Mucky Duck, too. Yes. It's funny, Shirley, you say $12.95. I remember the Mucky Duck stone crab claws, the very $6.95, all you can eat.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And you think
Yeah.
now, $29.95 for
Wow.
4 or something? That's
Okay, Andreas, where were you living in the first years in the restaurant?
Oh, my.
Oh, that's easy. I was living on Palm Avenue at
He
that
had a
time.
beautiful resort home on Avenue.
It was I lived off the resort. South Seas offered us, the department heads, nice apartments on Andy Rossi. At that time it was called Palm Avenue, but it's Andy Rossi Lane. It was in the location right across from Paul Walken, where he had his house. And yeah, I was there for 7 years.
Very
There were 6 units?
6 units.
6 units there, weren't there? Yeah.
3
Yeah,
couples.
3 units,
Right.
yeah. Yeah. A lot of people live there. A lot of people live there,
I think a
yes.
few people in the audience live there.
Probably.
How about you, Freddie?
Well, I live in Estero, which is right past Sod 4 Myers. And I still live there, so I commute about an hour and 15 minutes each way. So
And what about you,
Me,
Victor?
when I moved here in '76, I first lived at home at the beach house at South Seas for the longest 8 weeks of my life. And then, what was his name? Rick, somebody, the older gentleman, he had a beautiful 3-bedroom beach house at South Seas. Rick Angle, that's right. Rick Angle had, and he always liked somebody to stay in his house during the summer when he wasn't there, so I got the, yeah, I knew you'd remember that. Rick and Jean, and I got that house for the summer, and I had it for about 5 months, and we had an employee at the Mucky Duck, and that employee took one of the rooms, and I had the room, and we would utilize the pool area daily, and the recycling bottles would go out daily, and finally in 1976,
They didn't
I
have
said-
recycling back
They
then.
didn't have recycling, no.
No.
I don't know how many notes we threw out into the Gulf. But anyhow, I bought my first house on Sanibel Island in 1976 for $36,500. I said, I'm not going to pay rent anymore. $36,500, and sold it 10 years later for $100,000, you know? So,
How about you, Jeff?
When I first started here, we lived in a house, it's not there anymore. It was between the Castaways pool and the Mini Mart. People
I got a visual.
when people ask where I live, I said behind the dumpster at the Mini Mart. And then we moved to Captiva. We lived on Whiteman Lane, and I remember the landlord was going to raise the rent from $200 to $225 a month or something like that. And I said, that's too much. I'm going to build a house on Sanibel. And he said, why don't you buy this house? And I said, what? How much? He said, $50,000. I said, for this dump? I moved down to Sanibel next to Victor.
yeah, Robin and I would work at night. She and I would be working at night, and I'd call the house, hey, honey, what's going on? Oh, Jeff's here with the boys, and the 4 kids are in the tub, or the 3 kids, whatever, in the tub, and Jeff and I are having a nice bottle of wine and dinner. I'm like, I gotta go.
Back to work.
And Cheryl, what about you?
I was so fortunate in that we were working on this restaurant, and we'd rented a house in Sunset Captiva, which was great. But we didn't have jobs, so we couldn't get a mortgage trying to open a restaurant up. And George and Louise Tuttle, George and Louise ran the Island store for years, and he was an architect from, I think, Winter Park. But anyway, just great people, and they wanted to buy a place called the Ark, right on the Tween Water stretch. And their daughter was a very good friend with Luann, Lisa. And they were kind enough to do a purchase mortgage for us and to delay closing and let us just pay rent until we could get 2 years, hopefully, and last, which with wine license came in, to last in business. And they were just great people. And yeah, I'm still in that
still
house.
there.
Still there, right on Old Lodge Lane, right, you 2 blocks. We did our own laundry, so I carried the laundry home at night. It was only a block walk.
Okay. All right,
Are you getting your orders?
I am.
I guess so.
Okay, I'm going to start with you this time, Jeff. During those early years, what were your biggest fears or challenges?
Actually, I was 24. I wasn't afraid of anything.
That's a perfect answer.
I didn't care. I'd work 18 hours a day. It didn't matter if I didn't have any help or they didn't show up.
You only worked 18?
Only 18.
Really?
They were closed. They did payroll. So
How about you, Freddie? What were your biggest fears
The
and
biggest
challenges?
challenge is to get the employee to come to work. So, especially here being Captiva, sometimes they have to drive an hour and a half. They call you up at 7:30 in the morning while you're sleeping. Hey, I won't be to work today. So there was employee was the biggest challenge in the restaurant business, I think.
How about you, Andreas?
First, I was going to say we really didn't had any fears back then. We was just living the life.
Large.
But when you think back, I certainly had concerns, and just like everybody else here, when you were in a supervisory position, the biggest problem was always the employees. That was just to make sure they come to work and don't get too drunk the night before. And those were the biggest concerns we had, and it was very stressful for me. I remember at one time in 1978, I had a nervous breakdown. And I went to Dr. What was her name?
Dr.
Gentry.
Gentry.
We went there.
Oh my God, I could only get it.
Everybody went there. And
Sure, what do you want and how long do you want it for?
anyway, you just said it. She described Valium and sent me home and sent me home to Switzerland. And I went home for 5 weeks, and to recuperate. And I came back, and things were much better.
There you go. What about you, Cheryl?
What was the question?
During the early years, what were your biggest fears or challenges?
Well, I didn't have to worry about employees because I birthed them all.
We showed up.
You showed up, yes, you did. And they cried in the showers before they had to go to work because they didn't want to do it, but they stuck it out. They were good. They were really good. I think the biggest fear was, number one, getting that liquor license for the first time and making sure. But number two, I don't really think there were many fears that we had. I think we were so fortunate to have been in business in those early years. We saw changes. The changes were hard, but you could handle them. The whole island changed from the 60s to the 90s. The whole concept of the island changed from not really being a rental place.
Interval ownership.
Definitely being. And just think of all the good times we had at South Seas. Thank you very much. They used to be very wonderful about inviting the people that lived in the village, that lived in the area, to be part. It was great. It was great.
It was awesome.
It was wonderful.
All right, Victor, it's up to you.
Well, my biggest fear probably was, of course, we didn't have fears back then, but you're right. But then all of a sudden I started thinking, every morning when my phone would ring about 5:10, 5:15, it'd be my father. He was at work already. And we'd only left at 3, and I'm trying to get everybody from South Seas out of there at 3 o'clock in the morning. He goes, Dad's going to be here in about an hour, guys. We had got to go, turn the ACs off. And then the phone would ring. It's like 5:30 in the morning. He goes, oh, good, you're up. I said, well, of course I'm up. The phone rang. He goes, well, what time are you coming in? I said, in an hour. Well, half an hour's fine. And I want you to know, when I stopped at Perkins this morning at 4 o'clock on my way to work, I saw 4 of the employees there, and they were so drunk they never even saw me. I said, it's okay. work again till 4. They'll be there at 4. Don't worry about it. He goes, well, hurry up and get in here. I'm like, God.
Good.
Pick up. Wow.
All right,
I'm afraid to say anything these days.
Andreas, during those beginning years, what were your proudest moments?
God, yeah, what am I the first one? I'm sorry? Well, yeah, I mean, we did some nice work at South Seas when we were, I mean, obviously back in the early 70s, the culinary world in America was not what it is now. I mean, this is very clear. The whole world thought at that time America is hot dogs and hamburgers. And that's, of course, wasn't like that, but it was not like the French cuisine or anything like that. So certainly when we started those Friday night seafood buffets in 74, 75 at the Crown, that was always like a proud moment when everything was set up. And so yeah, that made me proud, and I was able to show everybody how to make these buffets. And so to me, that was nice. That was a reward for the hard work we did.
So the seafood buffets began at the Crown
Oh,
before
yeah,
they moved to Chadwick's?
Absolutely, became so successful. We just couldn't. We could only do about 200 people on a seafood buffet at the Crown, and then in '78, when Chadwick's opened, we made it over there, and all of a sudden we did 600 buffets, people for dinner. As Al Timbrook.
He's nodding his head over there, yeah.
I'm sure he can.
See, that's
attest to
interesting,
that.
because I moved here in '79, and
Okay.
so I only knew it at Chadwick's. I didn't know that they
Oh
had
no,
it
it
at the
was
Crown.
up there. That was
Yeah.
the beginning, right?
All right, and Jeff?
Probably, I had heard that, yeah, Cheryl will need to hear it again.
I will. Thank you, Jeff.
I think the growth in the business, I mean, we doubled our business every year for 5 years, especially after South Seas opened. It was just insane. And then we had good staff. I was proud of the staff we had. Everybody who wanted to work at the Nook was the place to be. And I had some chefs from other island restaurants that came to flip hamburgers at the Nook. It was interesting. I never had trouble getting cooks, or servers, actually. Most of them lived in boats out in the back, so
Yeah, oh yeah.
I knew where to wake them up.
Al and Dottie Pody, yes.
Al Pody.
Al Pody, yes.
Victor?
Dodie Pody.
I think in 35 years, my proudest moments were the success, the employees who made the Mucky Duck what it is, and the customers, the repeat customers. I remember Kathy and I were there one night, and after we had retired, and we were out for dinner one night, and ran into a family who was there with their children, and their children's children, and their great-grandchildren, and it was 4 generations of family there that night. And it was like, things like that make you very, very proud, you know, just the reputation and the history of the restaurant.
What about you, Freddie?
Well, it was like in Bellini, in my town. There was, once a year, my boss used to ask me, what do you think about inviting the old Captiva for hors d'oeuvres and wine and stuff? So once a year, we used to invite the whole island, open house, so for people to see the food, what we serve, and also, the place and everything else. Live music, everybody's a guest. Of course, we used to knock on the liquor people to give us some free wine and free liquor for the party.
I thought you did that all.
Cheryl?
The proudest moment, right?
Proudest moment.
I've been listening really hard. We were not here as long as any of you all as a restaurant, but I think The things that made me the most proud were the people, the customers, and as you said, the staff that worked with us. We were so fortunate that we got return business of generations, and the little extra things that we would try to do, people really seemed to appreciate. And I'm not sure, but we had 2 open kitchens so the dining room was open to the kitchen that you could actually watch the chef cook. And it was just fun. It was a lot of fun.
The staff, they were your kids.
I am proud
She's
of
proud
you,
of-
Betsy. I want how many miles is the Panama Canal question.
Somebody wants to have some ketchup.
What did he say?
There's a window I see. Oh my God.
Oh,
my
thank goodness, 'cause
God.
I didn't bring one.
Yeah, tell them.
The window, the story of the window, the ketchup bottle,
I remember the ketchup.
well, then you tell that one.
Well, the ketchup bottle came because there was a store called the Sanibel 5 and Dime that sold the ketchups on Sanibel. And
And Membo bought one day?
no. I think one of us bought one, and we started squirting people, and so they gave them to us because we sent them there. And it
That's
just
right.
was ketchups, and then they closed. So
Had to make your own.
I started making them. What was I supposed to do? They were such a hit, so I make them now.
I hate them.
The window, you only have 6 tables by the window, and everybody always wants to sit by the window. The window's right over here. Here, you want a table by the window?
And
I'd
who
roll
gave
it, but
you-
the
and
wheels
who
seem
ga-
to be, the wheels seem to
Well,
be,
it works.
it does it? Okay,
No,
yeah.
it works.
And who gave you that window, Victor?
Well, I tell you what, we were at Tween Waters enjoying our Christmas party. I think it was 1977 maybe, and
No,
and,
it was 83.
83, really. So everybody wants to sit by the window. So that year for Christmas, the girls, the waitresses, the servers presented us with a window, and we used to pick it up and carry it around the restaurant and put it in front of because everybody wants to sit by the window. And finally, I put wheels on it a number of years ago, and I know in my reign, I probably went through about
it
6
had wheels on
sets
it
of
when we
windows.
gave it to you.
What?
It had wheels on it when we gave it to you. John, who lived on Captiva, I can't think of his last name. He worked at Tween Waters.
What do you do there?
He made it for us. We asked him to make it for us.
I don't know who made it. I just remember one of Dan Stegman's carpenters was down once, and the whole thing was falling apart. And he showed up one day, and he took 4 screws out. He put one here, there, and there, and they were screws. They were this long. He hung cabinets for a profession. And he gets up there and he runs this screw in there. I don't think the thing has ever moved since.
Well, it fell over once, and the glass broke, and we had to replace it with plexiglass.
Right. And people used to open the window.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay, Cheryl, I'm going to start with you this time. Do you recall any close calls or scary moments
In the restaurant?
in the restaurant?
You gotta be kidding me.
Or in your life.
Come on, answer. The New Year's, that wasn't at our restaurant, but I just want to tell you what it was like back then, long time ago. It was the Ava and Ernesto, the Art Cafe. New Year's Eve had a horrible fire. Number one, we had a wonderful fire chief at the time, and when they came on call, because there was Ted Koppel there having the second seating, if I remember correctly, eating his dinner, they carried it out on the hood of a car, and the firefighters came, and they, with very little damage of setting off the sprinklers and everything, you correct me, John, they pretty much saved the building without, what?
They were actually able to open for a second seating in the parking lot.
Correct. However, there was a lot of damage done inside, and a mess. What year was this? Oh, 84, 5, 86 maybe? Later. Anyway, all the restaurant owners went over the next morning at the crack of dawn. This is after New Year's Eve. And was that my heart? We all washed dishes from 5:30 in the morning until, so she could be open New Year's Day. And they happened to be two of the nicest people in the whole world, Ava and Ernesto. Pardon?
It was about the community.
It was community. And I mean, that wasn't a scary thing, but a scary thing turned into a good thing because of the type of community we had at the time. Thank you.
Andreas, do you recall any close calls or scary moments?
Yeah, well, one or two for sure.
I've got a lot.
Of course, one who made, of course, one of the biggest impression was when before the first beach renourishment, which was in the 80s, late 80s, and the waves were breaking in front of the windows at the Mucky Duck. And nobody had any idea about what's going to happen with beach renourishment. The money wasn't there, and we had no idea, is it going to happen, is it not? We had to get permits for, remember to get rocks?
Pain the night
Well, that's right. So yeah, that was a scary moment, and that's when we decided, me and Victor and his father, we have to do something here, because one day we come to work and there's no more, the restaurant is gone. So that's when we decided to open a Mucky Duck in Fort Myers Beach. So that was certainly scary. But there were other moments, like when one I always remember, which was we were so lucky then. That was it was in it's South Seas still at the King's Crown. It was on a Friday when we had the seafood buffet, and everybody was finished. And one of the cooks put the butter on the grill to melt the butter, so we have melted butter, and then walked outside to smoke a cigarette, and all of a sudden the butter started to bubble over into the flames, and when I came back in there was a huge fire in the kitchen, but we were lucky that we had fire sprinklers and all that, and we were able to, but that would make my heart go race, that's for sure.
Would?
And what about you, Jeff?
Well, he's talking about the storm in '85 when it came over, when we had the storm surge, and I was at the Bubble Room, and we just opened up for dinner. Of course, we'd filled the whole downstairs with people, and water started pouring in the doors. So we had to get everybody out of there and put everything up we could, and then we left. And I walked up Andy Rossi Lane. The water was up to my waist, walking down the middle of Andy Rossi. And I get to the end, and here's this car tipped over. The roadity rode it. This car is tipped over like
Right.
the lights are on. She was in the water. It was Lou Ann.
It's a pink Suzuki Swift.
We drug her out of the car. I don't know what did you do after that?
I was in it. We were. It was still running, and we were trying to get it out. And
Underwater was
for
running.
like an hour, these guys tried to get me out, and finally we had to leave it, and it was buried up to the windshield in sand the next day.
Lee County Co-op was out the next day with a truck.
And
They finally hooked up a chain to it
towed
and
it away, and
towed it out.
the water was sloshing in the headlights. It was so sad.
Exactly.
Freddie, what's your recall for close moments?
Well, the only moment that I recall, I mean, the Bellini, the restaurant was halfway full, and the building was old, and then all of a sudden, a big rat started to run through the dining room. I see the service staff with the broom tried to chase, No, good thing of Bellini had a back door, so you can open the back. Everybody chased this thing out. That was
Oh my God.
Luann, you
Okay,
pick.
Victor.
You pick one. I don't know.
Well, we could talk about when Leo shot Tony.
I was gonna say. We used to bring over our dishwashers out of a. We used to bring our dishwashers over from an employment agency out of Miami, and I remember I'd go to the Greyhound station in Fort Myers and pick them up and bring them out. And it was a Saturday night, and these two guys were both from Cuba, and they were from two different tribes, I guess. And anyhow, and one of them had gone out a couple of weeks before and broken into somebody's car who was vacationing there and stolen his 357 Magnum out of the car, and the two of them were upstairs, and all of a sudden I hear it's like 9:30 at night, 9:25, and we hear bang, bang, bang. And I'm like, holy shit, what was that?
And I thought it was
I go
the
outside to
cats.
look, and there's Luann standing down there at the ramp going, where are you going? What are you going to do? And I'm like, Luann, get in here.
Well,
Get
I thought he
inside.
was messing with the cats. We had cats at the time, and I thought he was messing with the cats. And I walked outside, and there he is. And I go, "Give me that gun!" I go, "What are you doing?" And then Victor came out.
I said, go inside, lock it down, call 911, and anyhow, the guy went away. He kind of walked away, and he called. Finally, the cops came, and everybody was there. And it was a Saturday. I remember my dad was, he was. Anyhow, I'd gotten to work at 6 in the morning, and this happened, and the guy calls me on the phone from a payphone around 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, where are you? He said, I'm around the corner. I'm over by South Seas, the shopping center at South Seas. I said, all right, stay there. I said, Jeff and I are going to come and get you. And the cop who's standing there, the sheriff, he says, hey, you and I are about the same size. Give me your shirt, and I'm going to put my German Shepherd in the back of your BMW, and I'm going to drive over there. I'm going to get this guy. And I'm like, no. I said, no, we're not, you're not putting that dog in my car. I said, there's no way.
So we used Jeff's
So
van.
I said, you and your dog get in Jeff's van. I said, and we'll drive over together, and I'll get out, and then I'll get the guy to come out. And I told him Jeff's coming over anyhow, and I did. And anyhow, the guy stepped out, and that dog took out of that van. It scared the piss out of me. I can only imagine what it did to him. And it stopped right in front of him. I remember I got home about 6 in the morning, and Kathy
Turned your
wakes me
phone
up.
off.
Kathy
No, you
wakes me-
turned your phone off.
We didn't have phones back then. so-
No, you turned your house phone off. You
Well, somehow or
took it
another,
off
my
the
father
hook.
called at 8:30 in the morning, and Kathy answered the phone and said, Dad, he's asleep. He goes, well, what happened? He said, I'm reading this in the paper. What the hell happened? And
Victor,
wait. And so at 5 minutes to
your father
11, no
called
answer.
me. Your father called me at 6 o'clock in the morning from Perkins because he couldn't get a hold of you, and was reading it in the paper, and I had to answer the phone at 6 in the morning.
At 5 minutes to 11, the news comes on and says, she's at home nursing a child, trying to get the other one asleep. And the news comes on and says, shooting at the Mucky Duck, story at 11. She's like, oh my God, what has he said to who now? What has he done? And she wakes me up and says, you have a tea time with your father at 8:45. You need to get up and go. I'm like, what? So that was the safe.
The safe on the beach.
Oh, I remember it was a
Couple
Tuesday,
different safe
2:30,
stories, but
I remember one day around 2:30 lunch had ended, and we were so busy, and two guys walked in, long coats, jeans. This is summertime, and they're dressed for like they just step off out of the winter. Very suspicious looking guys, and we were so busy it never even registered to me, like other than, what is with these two guys? And no, I'm sorry, we're not serving lunch anymore. Okay, thanks. And then I get a phone call the next morning. Dad calls me up. It's 5:30 in the morning. He goes, you better get in here now. The safe's missing. I'm like, what? Oh, it's a big safe. It's bolted to the floor. What? He goes, the safe's missing. I'm like, okay, I'm on my way. And we went in there. This is before alarm systems and stuff like that. And I go in there and
Got an alarm the next day.
and needless to say, the safe was missing. And these guys had taken it out on the beach and it had a drop slot in the top with the knife edge inside. Anyhow, they had somehow or another fished everything out of it, except for the rolls of coins. And we found the safe.
Was that when it was still all cash at the Monkey?
That was
Oh, yeah.
yeah, of course it was. my father was alive, it was all cash. Yeah, our Father, who art in heaven. No.
Anybody else have stories?
We done already?
I don't know.
This is good.
I don't know. Are we done?
Orders up.
Waitress.
I got no more order. I have no more orders. I don't know. Oh no. Oh, we have another order. Oh.
Who shot Tommy? I know who shot Tommy.
All right. We'll start with you, Jeff. Do you have any celebrity guests? Any juicy celebrity stories?
At Timmy's Nook.
One time, yes. I know.
You can move on.
No, one time, Timmy's Nook, we had this guy who cleaned up in the morning. He was a painter, part-time painter, so we called him Rembrandt. But he cleaned up in the morning so he'd get his free beer at lunch. And he'd mop the floors and clean the bathrooms and stuff. And one day he's doing that, and the door opens, and this guy walks in. And he said, I want some eggs for breakfast. And Rembrandt says, oh, we don't serve breakfast. Get the hell out of here. It was Vincent Price.
Vincent Price. Wow.
True story.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. See, Victor?
Wow.
Yeah.
You had what's his name? The weatherman.
We had Willard.
Willard.
Right.
How about you, Andreas?
Everyone had Willard. He ate
Well, I wouldn't say juicy stories, but I obviously over the years we had so many celebrities that I
What's else?
forget the names. But I mean, honestly, also because of Bob Rauschenberg brought a bunch of Hollywood celebrities to the islands, and but before that, I remember we had people like Bennett, what's his name, the singer?
Tony
Tony
Bennett.
Bennett.
Bennett. I mean,
Tony Bennett.
and of course South Seas at that was a very popular, a great resort at the time, and it had a lot of celebrities coming, and I mean, there's, I just can't remember them all. I mean, there's so many. Movie stars, sports stars, TV stars, presidents from. I'll never forget one story. I was in the kitchen, and Victor came back and said, "Andreas, there's a guy outside. He says he's the finance minister of Switzerland." And I said, "Finance minister? That must be one of the, I mean, we have not the president, we have a council of seven, so that's one of those 7 councils." And so I went out there and looked, and Victor, of course, was already calling him by his first name and told me, and
I couldn't pronounce his last name.
Imagine your
and
surprise.
I thought, oh my God, he is like he will be the president, and of course he had to wait an hour and a half to get in too, just like everybody else. So
Perfect.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, they were great stories.
How about you, Cheryl?
Oh, my favorite celebrity will always be Bob Rauschenberg. I called him my Marlboro man because he was a good-looking guy. He really was a nice person. He's done a lot for Captiva. Just a very special man.
And whenever his dogs ran away, they always came to the Mucky Duck.
And if they came the other way, all of us at the Sunshine Cafe would be out gathering them up. But because we did a lot of dinners for him, he was nice enough to do his Cuba trip and dedicated it to the greenhouse, which I thought was really nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Very nice.
And what about you, Freddie?
Give you an
Well, as I recall, mostly we used to get like a baseball players like George Brett, Steve Carlton, a few basketball coaches, because spring training was down in Fort Myers, so they come on the island probably, so they don't come here so often, so they like to tour the Captiva, so that was it.
I have one incident about this bottle there. It was after the Super Bowl.
I was just going to say.
You remember that? You
Oh,
probably
I-
are better in telling
No,
that.
no, you're better. You go ahead. I was going to refresh your
But I hope I said it right, because I think it was John McCollum, wasn't it?
probably. John might have done that. It was when the Pittsburgh Steelers, or when the...
No. It was the Washington Redskins, because it was John Riggins.
Okay.
John Riggins was he was a big guy and very he was not exactly a gentle guy. Was always in trouble in the NFL a little bit because of his behavior. But anyway, he came in with some others, his other players, and John McCollum was trying to do the same trick with this ketchup bottle to him. Holy cow, did that guy get mad? He got up and took John McCollum and said, "Don't you ever do this with me again." And John, remember that, Rick? Oh dear.
Remember when the Super Bowls used to be, Miami was in the Super Bowl for a number of years, and they used to come over to Captiva,
Right.
Steelers.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
before-
Franco
that was before
Harris
then,
and
yes.
and all those guys would come over.
Right.
And I don't remember what I said one night to one of them, but you walked up to me later and said, "Oh my God, you're lucky you're not part of this dirt on the floor right now, because you just pissed off one of those guys so bad." He was so angry at me, and it's like these guys would come in. I mean, we'd be playing darts with Franco Harris and all the guys from the Steelers. But one of the stories I remember was Christy Brinkley. And the year that she was on the island with her husband and their children, and they had brought the nanny with them to help take care of the kids. And I believe that's the story you read in this paper shortly after that. She was getting divorced because the nanny. And that was on Captiva at the time, yes.
Who was she
Yes,
married to?
Marcel? What? Oh, no. Yeah.
I hope so too.
I hope it's decaf.
All right, we're going to start with you, Victor. In the past, what was the most challenging thing about working in a restaurant on Captiva?
I really don't have anything to compare it to. I mean, I seriously don't. I started when I was 21 or 22 years old. I went to hospitality management school. I worked at some odd jobs in the food industry and in high school and during summer camp and stuff. But my first real job in a restaurant was, well, I got hired out of college at Arby's Roast Beef in Miami, and I worked there for 8 days, but I was fired. I was fired because I was too nice to the employees, and as a manager, you can't be nice to the employees. You need to be a little more stricter with them. So I said, okay, thanks. And I always wanted to buy them dinner to have them come over, the Raffle brothers from Youngstown, Ohio. But the challenging, what was the challenging thing?
Challenging thing about working in a restaurant.
The challenging thing about working in a restaurant in Captiva. Consider, how do you convince somebody that's well worth 2.5 to 3 hours to stay? Because you're going to have a great time. What else are you doing tonight? You're on Captiva. You've come to dinner with your family. You're going to go sit by the pool tomorrow. You're going to wait 2.5 to 3 hours now, have dinner, and be out of here in 45 minutes. And and tomorrow you're going to sit at the pool and you're going to say to somebody, "We went up to this place on Captiva last night. You know what? It really wasn't bad. It was just one hell of a long way, but it wasn't that bad." Challenging. Yeah.
In the early 70s, the challenge was surviving the summer because there was nobody
yeah.
here.
Mm-hmm.
Business.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
And no air conditioning. was
Ghost
even worse.
town.
We would, on Captiva, everything shut down, and especially in August, September. Even on Sanibel, there was very few restaurants open. I think 1 September, the only restaurant open on both islands, the only place you go get a drink, was the Legion.
Wow.
Pretty pitiful, isn't it? But we survived. I remember days we'd do 12 lunches and 10 dinners, and we got through it.
Yeah. We used to close for 6 weeks every year.
The what?
We used to close for 6 weeks. Yeah.
60. Yeah, everybody did.
Yeah.
All right, Cheryl.
We would close every September, but everyone knew that. You worked hard during the season as the service, everyone. You saved your money, and we would take off that month. So I looked at what might be a bad thing, being closed for 30 days, is a wonderful thing because we went to California and worked the vineyards and got to buy vegetables and look at whatever is happening for the next year. I think Freddie summed it up pretty well too. For a while, it was getting employees to come out and work on the island. That was the hardest challenge, I think, many of the restaurants, and still is, totally still is. Much worse. Yeah.
Well, the biggest challenge for me was, when I used to be general manager in Bellini, and you have 100 people on a waiting list that sit 500 people for dinner through the evening. So that was the biggest challenge beside, the employee coming to work. So.
I just want to say, I think one of my biggest challenges as I look in the back of the room probably was red ginseng. I think red ginseng was one of our biggest challenges of being successful in the business.
What a great bar.
That's actually a perfect segue to this next one.
What number is this?
Yeah, I think this is about it. We're going to close soon, aren't we?
All right.
You promise?
Cheryl,
Yes.
what one building housed the most restaurants and what were their names?
It's not there anymore.
Is this,
I don't know. I would say
well, I think about the Captiva Inn, which, well, I think about Bellini's. I mean, the Captiva Inn with George and Janine. Do you remember? Huh? Oh, the greenhouse has really changed.
Twilight,
Yeah,
Moonlight.
it's been a lot.
That
There
has
was
been a lot.
the-
Oh, redfish, bluefish, remember? Yeah,
Probably the greenhouse, yeah.
probably the greenhouse.
greenhouse.
Yeah. Is that why you asked me?
Oh
Yeah.
yes, I remember the no name.
Yes,
And then what-
very much.
What was the name of it before it was the no name?
Uptown.
There was the Uptown,
Uptown.
and then the no name, and then it was
It's
right before it was the no
where,
name. It was the
where
Uptown.
Lavande and Bellini's.
Lavande, Viva.
Viva was where the F&B, where the Oyster House, where the bank was.
Control.
Viva was where.
Where Royal Shell is now.
Was it before Viva?
Before Viva, it was the bank.
Yeah.
The bank. Oh, and after the bank was, no, after Viva was the French restaurant.
Viva.
Viva was the Royal Shell office. Remember that,
I don't know.
that building, that weird
Yes.
building?
Is that Viva? Or was
All right, the wait's getting to be too long. People are leaving.
Claude and Gerard.
What are you presently doing?
Well, presently I'm a general manager of a Captiva Island Yacht Club, and I've been there
Right on.
18 years.
18 years.
The members are great. They treat me well, and this is it. Thank you.
This is it.
And Cheryl Sims, what are you presently doing?
I am still working. Can you believe that? Betsy said, Mom, don't you think you ought to quit before they fire you? I'm working, I do work with I'm on the fire commission, I guess, a commissioner, and what else do I do? Help Betsy at the, I've said I'm a realtor with Karen Bell Realty, and John Bates is my partner in that. And I work 2 farmers markets, one on Sanibel and one on Captiva. And it just doesn't get any better.
What do you do in your spare time?
It's good. Life is good. Have great book club group. So we're, 16 years strong, the book club. So that's good.
Jeff Chef?
I'm retired. For 2 years, and I
Yay!
still haven't gotten used to it.
How's that feel?
All right.
Still have those dreams, do you? Me, currently I'm doing AFN, and I'm not going to say what it means, dear. It's okay, but I'm doing absolutely nothing. Right now, I get to finally, after all those years, I get to be a father for my children that are all grown up, and a grandfather for my 4 grandchildren, and a husband who's home so much that now she's finding things to do during the day and to go out. And we're, you know what, we've reached a point in our lives, if we don't like our neighbors, if we don't like the weather, we bring in the slides and start up the motorhome and we go, because we sold our house and we live in a motorhome. Yep.
Great.
Andreas?
Well, I'm officially, for the IRS, I'm retired.
Yeah.
But I still work I still end up working 6 days a week, so I'm still there.
Wow.
So.
Two last orders to take care of this evening.
Okay.
That was a good question to end on. This first one.
Oh, Victor, what story are you relieved we didn't ask you about tonight?
I'm not going there. There's too much of that in the newspaper these days. No. Gosh, I didn't ask. I'm glad you didn't ask me, because it's such a long story about that night on January the 4th in 1978, where this girl walked into the restaurant and I looked at her, and it's a long story. But anyhow, she's now my wife, and we have been for 40 years this year. Yes.
And Andreas, what's the story you relieved we didn't?
Well, I'm glad nobody asked about the sex and drugs and rock and roll back in the 70s.
Oh, boy.
Oh boy, he's right.
How about you, Freddie?
I think what I think, I'm glad that this is over. This is my first time doing this.
I'm with you, Freddie.
Not as glad as me.
Thanks.
Okay, Cheryl?
Well, I see two wonderful people that ended up being just really dear friends, George and Shirley, and I'm so glad they didn't tell the story of their first meeting.
Okay.
Oh, yeah?
Would you like to elaborate on that?
They probably would.
Oh, come here.
Oh,
Here you go, George.
George's going to tell it.
Shirley and I were dating, and I was hiding out from.
Gotta put the mic up to your
Your mouth.
Shirley and I were dating, and we were kind of hiding out. So we came to the greenhouse.
We
and
hadn't been open long.
hadn't been open long, and they only took cash. So I asked Cheryl. I said, "Well, you know, this is my first time here. Looks like a great restaurant. We'd like to come in and eat." I said, "But I only have like $120 in my pocket. Do you think that's enough?" She goes, "No, I think you should go home and get some more money."
Remember, our entrees were 5-course dinner, $12.
Okay, Jeff.
Oh,
Love you
the
guys.
statute of limitations has run out on it.
Be careful what you say.
We used to, in the summertime, we'd house sit on these homes on the Gold Coast on Captiva. And there'd be 4 or 5 of us in a row, all had homes. We'd house sit it all summer. And there were some great pool parties. Glad there wasn't any iPhones back then.
Oh, God.
Isn't that the truth?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. I'll start with you, Freddie. What final thought or idea would you like our audience to take home with them tonight?
Well, I think that this island is great, so I'm glad that, you know, all the people live here, they go around to Captiva, and I have a lot of memory of the island, so when back from the 93 until 2017 and going. So this is a great island, so, and I just want to, you know, remember all the memory and the good friends that I met and a good person on the island. I would say thanks.
That's nice.
And Cheryl, what would you?
What's the question again?
What final thought or idea would you like to leave the audience with?
I think that we are all so fortunate today. Has it changed since the early 70s, the mid-70s, the early 80s? Absolutely. Every place changes. But we're still a phenomenal community, and we've got wonderful restaurants, and as Freddie said, the best of memories. And I'm so glad to be here tonight and be a part of this. Thank you. Thank you.
Andreas, is there any final thought for
Yeah,
you?
I can just concur with Cheryl. I'm very, very grateful that I made that decision a long time ago to come here and never left. And I'm still here. And to me, that's just, I'm very thankful of that. America was a wonderful place to come for me.
And Jeff, even though you're retired, what are your thoughts?
When I was at Timmy's Nook, there was this mouthy little waitress that worked there.
Which one?
She, well, all of them, but there was one special one, little girl, and she hounded me for years and years, and finally convinced me to marry her.
I love that.
3 children, 2 grandchildren, and 40 years later, we're still married.
Hey,
Robin.
And she's still mouthy.
And Victor?
I would say that Captiva was the best chapter of my life next to my life with my wife and children. Captiva means so much to me, and the beauty of the island, the beauty of watching the island go from a very slow, unknown destination to what it is today, and the customers, like I said before, the amount of years and years and years of people that have been coming to this island, and the employees who help make the Mucky Duck what it is still today is more in my heart than anything else, because it's just something so much to be proud of, and Captiva will always live in my heart. Read the question, Luann. Read the question.
Captiva's my home. I mean, I moved here in 1979, and I've lived here more than half my life, and I've worked at the Mucky Duck more than half my life, and
So you're only 48?
I'm 2. I was 2 when I started. And just like Victor said, I love it. I'm waiting on people, and now their children are coming in, and now their children's children are coming in, and it's like, how can you be getting older when I'm not?
That's right.
Of course we're not, Luann.
Thank you.
Thank you all. This is
It's been wonderful for us.
and you know, history oftentimes it's a passive experience. I think this is a history lesson that many of us have lived, and it is certainly one that is very emotional because of the memories that we heard here today, and that I think we all participated in. We have a lot to be thankful for, and a lot of people to thank. First of all, let's, again, a round of applause for these folks who gave their time. Also, I'd like to thank our servers. I don't even know who that is back there, but somebody.
Woo, Queenie!
And Myrnie and Robin. Come on, okay. We also would like to thank the Captiva Trust Company for their support throughout the year. And our many, many generous donors, because without this type of support, we can't do these type of things in terms of, you know, the programs that we're able to offer, offering free admission, and the hospitality that comes with it. So again, these are the folks that make it happen, as well as our working board. So if there's folks, our board members are still here, they raise their hand because they do need to be recognized. And also a very special thanks to our event committee, because they're the ones who do the heavy lifting for these type of events. Dave Jensen, Mary Jane Vinson, and Queenie. Well, again, this was our first event. We believe we're off to a good start. Our next event is on January 16th. It is a double feature of two of our Captiva history documentaries, and that'll be at the Wakefield Room at Tween Waters, starting at 6 o'clock. So if you've seen these movies before, it's always great to see them again. If you haven't seen them, please join us. We also have a few reservations still available for our collaborative event that we'll be doing with the Sanibel Museum and Historical Museum and Village, and that's going to be on July 31st. That's a reservation event, so did I say January? July, okay, well, I'm hoping the season gets behind us really quick. So, January 31st, and that is going to be at the ballroom at South Seas. So again, if you can join us for that, if you haven't made a reservation, think about doing that. But again, I want to thank all of you for coming, because without you, we wouldn't have the kind of programs that we do. So again, thank you very much.